in peril. If you want to know what drives me, Madam Speaker, is to make sure that we never go back. So, Madam Speaker, so if you want to know what is the root of our problems today, it is the bad policies of the PNP in the 1990s. Madam Speaker, they don't like to hear this. And 90% of Jamaica may not appreciate and understand it, but we're going to bring the facts. Jamaica faced 2 major periods of debt distress. The first, from the 1970s to the late 1980s. And this was driven by 2 global oil price shocks, a failed experiment with democratic socialism, a global recession that slashed bauxite revenues, and Hurricanes Allen and Gilbert in 1980 and 1988, respectively. The second period of debt distress, was from the 1990s to the late 2010s. And it stemmed largely from the PNP's policy during the FinSAC era, which collapsed financial institutions, wiped out the business class, and triggered a prolonged recession worsened by the 2008 to 2009 global financial crisis. In the mid-1990s, Jamaica faced a financial sector crisis which resulted in the collapse of a number of financial institutions. The financial sector meltdown was not caused by any exogenous, meaning outside shocks or global crisis. In fact, the US, our major trading partner, had robust growth in the 1990s, averaging 3.4% per annum. This was purely caused by bad government, bad policy choices, and poor superintendence of the economy. Listen to me clearly, members. FinSAC was a homegrown domestic crisis wholly caused by the PNP, for which we are now only just recovering. Our debt to GDP prior to the advent of the FinSAC crisis was 72%. The government at the time established FinSAC to bail out the collapsed financial institutions. This bailout cost the country 42% of GDP. In other words, 42% of what we produce in any one year, we had to take it to pay for FinSAC. By way of comparison, the US government's bailout intervention during the global financial crisis of 2008-2009 was only 9% of their GDP. So you see the magnitude of the scale of FinSAC relative to the size of our economy. Within 6 years after the establishment of FinSAC, our debt spiraled out of control from 72% of GDP to 130% of GDP, almost doubling. That caused interest costs alone on the debt to consume almost 70% of tax revenues. So just the cost to pay for the debt, the interest, at one point cost us 70% of all the tax revenues that we collect. If you add public sector wages to that, and other things that you have to pay for out of tax revenue, then you basically would have no money left. You would have no money left to fix roads, no money left to build schools, no money left to repair clinics, no money left to pay for water. So if you ever wondered, if you ever wondered why we have so much infrastructure that has been left unmaintained and now falling apart, if you ever wondered why things are the way they are, if you ever wondered, Madam Speaker, it's an important point that needs to be made. Because the average man listening might, in the background of the shrill of noise that we hear, this might go way back in their memory. And they see a pothole emerge in a road, and they wonder, why doesn't the government fix that pothole now? But they will never stop and reflect on a very important point, Madam Speaker, that when this road was built 30 or 40 years ago, what should have happened is that there should have been a reserve maintenance programmed into the budget, matched with what they call the engineered life of the road, that as a little crack emerges, out of the revenues that you have, you go and you use some tar chemical and you seal that crack. So no pothole appears. But that road that you are looking at now, that the potholes are all emerging, they weren't maintained. And the reason why they couldn't be maintained is because we had to take almost 70% of our tax revenues to pay for the bad policy choices of the PNP during the 1990s and 50s. I want Jamaicans to understand that lack of maintenance accumulates. Lack of spending on infrastructure amounts to what is called disinvestment. So you can build a hospital, but if you don't maintain a schedule of maintenance, the value of that hospital declines, depreciates. So today when you look at the hospital and say, why this government don't do something about it? Even if this government were to take all the money it has now, it couldn't today immediately halt and stop the deterioration. I think the public must understand this. Because, Madam Speaker, it is the same public that voted in the same PNP government over and over and over again. It is a point that needs to be understood, that the economic struggle that the country has had to restore its economy is so that it is able to have revenues steady and stable and predictable that it can then use to maintain and provide the things you want over a long period without making bad decisions to put those revenues in peril. If you want to know what drives me, Madam Speaker, is to make sure that we never go back. So, Madam Speaker, so if you want to know what is the root of our problems today, It is the bad policies of the PNP in the 1990s. Madam Speaker, they don't like to hear this. And 90% of Jamaica may not appreciate and understand it, but we're going to bring the facts.